Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Great to see everybody here. And I hope you like the new intro. And also, I have a special treat for all of you today. And I'm hoping you're going to like that as well. I'm going to debut a new Yanafui video on the show tonight. So that's something really exciting. And I hope everybody's looking forward to that. But I want to jump into the chat, say hello to everybody. I see people already making comments. That's pretty good. Don't want to miss any of them. We have Krigaloo Bunsen here. He's seems to be happy with his character in the thumb. He's got the best R type. And Wilberforce points out that at least it isn't pinkish purple. So yeah, the non-pinkish purple R type is the best. Robert Shepard is back, so welcome. It's great to see you again. Thanks for being here. And a couple of other comments. Just a kid from Brooklyn who has a great channel, Gen X Strong, and everybody should go check it out. He says, "What up? A little Jack Show pre-gaming." Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny that this would be the Jack Show pre-show and starting late. So the Jack Show must really be slow going today. So it is the little late pre-show before the late Jack Show. But you know, that's par for the course, I guess, with CG programming. Maybe Human is here. He says, "Doomed, I tell ya." And the Wilberforce Wooster is pointing out that yes, indeed, I am quite doomed. Apparently, everybody is streaming today. So Patrick Thomas Parnell is streaming. Michael Bancroft is streaming. The Jack Show. Ethan was still streaming. The last time I checked, Ali was streaming. I mean, doesn't everybody know it's my night? I mean, what's going on here? Who do I call? You know, somebody get a producer on the line. We got to get this schedule worked out. So who else? I think that's everybody joining us today. Well, you four or five are indeed lucky because you are in for a special treat. I'm going to quickly debut Yanafui's new video for everybody before anyone else gets to it. And then I'll bring on tonight's panel. So for all of you, this is the first showing on a live stream of Yanafui's new video. And you can expect to see it on Ethan's show after this, I think, plenty of times, because it's another Ethan-focused video, and it's pretty good. So here's Yanafui's latest video. I did it Comicsgate. So enjoy, everyone.
And now I quickly see, so I will make my own new business. My friends, I'll make it clear, I'll not return to the mainstream. I'll drop some frogs by my own, and I profound in every live stream. But more, much more than this, I'll do it confiscate. Regrets, I had a few, but then again, I like to mention.
Bring me Ethan and John. Bring them to me.
I got some weight, my book is late, but only girls doing so well though. I plan to exercise in a new gym or Nelly's treadmill, but for much more than this, I didn't confiscate. Yes, there were times I laughed at mine. I hope it was a
Fuck CG.
But I don't care. Million Fridays, coffee,
Crazy good. I know with us having that many views streams, like I would say, I believe.
Thank you. That is what running a successful YouTube channel looks like, right there, guys. Shit.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Brought a tear to my eye. Absolutely. Yeah, it was funny seeing a lot of references to older Comicsgate moments. So it's a nice little video he put together there. I think it tugs on the heartstrings. It's got some nostalgia built into it, and definitely always bringing the laughs. So it's great stuff from Mr. Yanafui. We got Amit Reina joining us. So great to see you again, Amit. Thanks for being here. And with that, I think I'll bring on the panel. We'll get to tonight's review. So everybody, please welcome. We have Moonshine.
This show brings a tear to my eye.
Also Kriga.
Hey, everybody.
And Dark Gift Comics.
What's up? What's up?
Hello.
Book a book.
Is that the first or the second?
That's the second.
Okay. I'm going to large screen you. Not that I don't believe you, but I don't see any evidence of it being the second. Isn't there
Show the
supposed to be?
spine.
Yeah, it's on the spine.
You're not showing the spine where it shows.
No, oh, there it is. I was looking for it.
Wow. That is super subtle. You think he did that intentionally?
I think so. Because this is the first one.
Okay.
And this doesn't have a 1 on it.
Mm-hmm.
It just has the title. So
Did anyone get the reprint of the first one?
no.
I'm wondering if it was if it says 1 on it or not.
Oh, good question. Yeah, no, the only thing I got with the second one was I finally got what was the silent one? Foreign Agent.
Oh, that's a good read.
Yeah, because I missed it the first time around. So I don't think it's a second printing. I think it's he just had leftovers that he was selling on the campaign.
Right.
So
Cool.
Did you get any of the sketchbooks with it?
no, I didn't. Not this time. I thought I got the sketchbook with the first one, but when I pulled out the first one, I didn't see it. So maybe I didn't get it. Maybe I missed out on both sketchbooks, and I'm gonna kick myself in the ass for that.
I think I'd agree with maybe humans that it's stupid. Like if this was on the bookshelf, this would be bad. But since it's crowdfunding, if you finish the first book, that cover would immediately tell you that this must be the second book. But,
Yeah, it feels like you almost have to know.
yeah, this
in
cover
advance.
is a pivotal story point in the story. So that's you obviously know this must be the second book by looking at that cover.
It's kind of a weird setup too, because it's only a sequel in the sense that it's the second in sequence, but it's two halves of one whole story.
Yeah, it's
Right.
It in theory, I imagine maybe at some point he's just going to print this as a single story.
Well, yeah, because the first one says Earthbound Between Two Breaths on Earth, and then this one just says Earthbound, and then a 2 on the spine. So maybe if he gave it a different subtitle, it would have made sense to not put a 1 or a 2 on it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the thought process was there, but Narwhal is a unique cat, so.
Yeah, Ahmed and Kid are saying this Narwhal puts out books. Yeah, so this is his third book, and it's not just their like 320-page comics. These are like probably at least 120 pages each of them. I think this one might be 150. I didn't count, but it's quite thick.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they are two. There's that like short, the naked samurai story in the back of each one, but those were probably like what, like 5 or 6 pages each. So it really is like, yeah, like 100, at least 120 pages main story each book. So
Yeah, he puts out a lot. I mean, obviously his art style is designed to be quickly done, but I mean, still he pretty much does the whole book top to bottom. So it's a lot of work because he's writing it, lettering it, coloring it, doing the I assume even making the preprint files and whatnot.
I
yeah,
believe Camel Moon's book is coming out pretty soon, Amit. So I don't think that label will apply to him.
yeah,
I did see on his update he actually had interiors, Camel Moon. I mean, had interiors, so he's at least doing something with it.
Yeah.
So he's
Although,
like George R. Martin. He's getting there. Years and years from the finish line, but he's there. He's
apparently,
doing something.
although I think that would apply to Cecil, not Camel Moon.
yeah. I think the only thing that Narwhal didn't do was I think he actually had editors. I think
Yes.
everything else. You're right. I think he did. I think he did everything else himself.
So it's quite an undertaking that he gets decent amount of money, but I mean, it's under 100K and he gets these books out each time. So it's pretty impressive.
Well, for the second one, I can take a quick peek here. I think he raised 77K.
I mean, that's respectable, obviously. Over
Yeah.
1,000 backers, yeah.
Yeah, the backer number is respectable. I think that's like a second highest success in CG in terms of numbers. If he's raising less than 100K, it's probably because he's not charging very much for the books.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
no, not at all.
so you can get both books, which are about 120 pages of story each for $50. So that's a pretty good deal, I'd say.
Mhm. Yeah, I have the Narwhal starter pack on the way, so I think I'll get the second printing of Earthbound 1, and I can tell you guys if there's a 1 on the spine, I guess, when I get it.
What's the starter pack?
Starter pack has everything. Shirt, sketchbook, and then
It looks like that's actually giving you the original hardcover version of the book.
Oh, nice.
I also
Yeah, I
have
never-
the soft cover because I don't need a hardcover. But
I never got the hardcover. I was an early backer, so I didn't need to reback it for the hardcover. And now I'll have both.
Yeah, it looks like you're getting both hardcovers.
Yeah.
I would say too, it's if you're into his style at all, that is definitely a good deal price point wise. I mean, even his soft cover stuff. If you guys remember Xenotype, this is like, I don't know, a step or two down from the cardstock that he had for like every page. And this is pretty good, pretty sturdy all the way through.
and the pages aren't even quite as thick as you said as Xenotype, but they're just so many that it's still pretty solid.
So all of you have mentioned that it's pretty much one story. Does that mean that the first book ended pretty abruptly and that this one picks up almost as if it's the next panel and there was no real transition between the two?
It plays out more like a TV episode. Like it ends like where a TV episode would end, and then picks back up where the next episode. That's how it came across to me. Like it wasn't an abrupt ending. It ended right where like the action for the next book was about to begin. There was already a decent amount of action in the first book, so it wasn't like there was none of that. But yeah, it was just like I don't want to say cliffhanger because like you knew what was coming, but it was like when a TV show ends and you're like, oh no, I gotta wait for next week to watch the next episode. It was kind of like one of those.
I would liken it to a two-parter whenever Star Trek did a two-parter. It's like it ends where you a good pausing point, but it is the same story. It's not like this is years later. It's like the next day. It like builds up the whole scenario of this book, and then this book plays across maybe 2 days or even just a single day, perhaps. Like it might be a single day, even now that I think about it.
No, I feel like it's 2. I feel like it's 2 because the one scene it looks like the sun's coming up.
Yeah, because they
Okay,
had that.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, so 2 days then. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say they had that late night party in the first one, and then there is the continuation from there, and the ball. It's not a ball, but
Yeah, it's a high school dance. Yeah.
yeah. I was gonna say I look at that cover and I'm like, oh, that's what's her face from that Disney movie. Most Disney movies, I guess.
Oh yeah, she does look like she's wearing like what's that, Belle from Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on that until you said it. Yeah.
I wish we had a picture of it right now.
What, the
So
cover?
it's right there in his.
Yeah, I wanted to get one that's maybe here on the campaign. Is it this dress here?
You know, it's funny. Inside the book, no one's wearing the dress that's on the cover. But yeah, because that's.
Yeah, it is that. Yeah, it's that character, but that's not the style she's wearing in there now.
Yeah, I can move it closer if you need me to.
Oh, okay. All right. So where does it leave off on the first story? I remember vaguely that it's basically an alien invasion through a high school, and they're given a weapon to be able to control people. And
it's more like kind of a Men in Black. The humans are just kind of like have to be not told what's going on, and they're doing their own mission with the humans around them.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, the 2 of the 3 main characters are woken up in book 1. Just a little recap. They're woken up and they're told the mission. They're going to compete for their freedom, and they have to bag 3 out of 5 targets. 4 of them are these sisters called the Sirens. And one is an old friend of theirs that escaped 4 years earlier and crash landed on Earth. And so they're given these.
That's where the title is. It's Earthbound, as being captive on Earth. He's stuck on Earth. That's the why it is called Earthbound.
Right. Yeah. It's not like no one's traveling there. He's stuck here. Yeah. So the first half of the first book is kind of told more from his point of view, and then when the other 2 characters get to Earth, you kind of see it from like all their points of view, and they each have a gun that control. Like if the girl shoots somebody, then they're under her control. If the guy shoots somebody, they're under his control, and then if they both shoot somebody, that person goes into a coma. So. Although the 4 sirens, they can flop back and forth. They can flip-flop. So if one gets shot, then they're on the one side. If the other gets shot, then they're back on the other person's side. So
I would also add to that, since you mentioned the sirens, we get in the first book, we just know the sirens are powerful and we're introduced to them, but they just seem like girls. Here it kind of like gives us their point of view and kind of reveals why this 13th sponsor would want them in kind of this battle royale, galaxy-wide battle royale that apparently they're recruiting. That's kind of why they want them. Right.
Yeah. They call it the Grand Prix, but it seems like it's some kind of like, big battle, like a Running Man type of scenario, you know?
I remember that the first book foreshadowed a lot of things that didn't really get addressed. I mean, do we have a chance to finally get a little bit more details on some of the mysteries that were laid out there?
I would say so.
Yeah, I mean, if you're referring to the other alien girl that was on there, on Earth, from the 12th ward or whatever they call it.
There was
You
that.
get to,
There was
yeah,
also the Grand Prix.
the Grand Prix. That's the big battle royale. Yeah. Yeah, so they
Ahmed,
talk.
it is like, is it like the Hunger Games? It's like possibly, but this whole kind of story arc is just a recruitment to get people. They obviously they're recruited against their will, but we're not exactly sure why they have this Grand Prix. But we get kind of some motivations, particularly of the sirens, about why they might not want to be in this game or might actually want to be in this game. But we don't actually
Right.
see this Grand Prix take place. This is all before it.
Because you do see that one girl, like the one girl who has the bet going on, she goes into the Grand Prix on her own free will. You know, or at least that's what you're led to believe.
Yeah.
You know.
Maybe Human wants to know if there's any dialogue. I guess you can flip through and show a few pages.
Yeah, so this the Indiegogo, I think, is just showing the art. I think even on those pages, there's actually dialogue and sound effects.
Right.
Yeah, it's in there, but it's not eating up all of the space. It's not like some people in Comicsgate that
Mortal
read the
Kombat.
book.
As a musician, I was digging all his musical references. Like in the background, he's got lyrics playing to like Purple Rain, and I think there was a Spice Girls song playing at one point.
That is the theme song for the Mortal Kombat movie.
Yeah, because like the fight breaks out, and the DJ is under the one person's control, so he just breaks into Mortal Kombat.
So that scene in particular, these are two of the sirens, and they've each been taken control by the others, so they're fighting each other. And so now you can finally see why they'd want them. They're not just, normal humans. They're like zipping around and jumping tens of feet into the air and whatnot.
And I love that he throws it back here, so like those last 4 pages, the Mortal Kombat theme has been playing the whole time. But there's plenty of dialogue that is just enough to let you know what's going on, but you can see it's not overwhelmingly like the speech balloons have like 1 word, 2 sentences tops.
Does it feel like? Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, even here, like these 2 characters have a bet going about what's happening down on Earth, and even when they're talking, which is the most, I guess, expositional part of the book, is when the scenes with them. Even the speech balloons there aren't very like, it's not very
Imposing.
Yeah, like that's probably like the biggest speech balloon in the whole book right there.
Does it feel like a more mature work, since this is actually Narwhal's third crowdfund project, but it was something that he wrote all the way back in, I guess, 2018 or 2019?
I would say, like you said, like you thought there was a lot of inappropriate sex references.
In the first one,
there's almost no sex references. There's a small romance subplot, but it just ends with a kiss.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you were off put by like the weird kind of childish sex stuff, that's kind of gone from this book.
Yeah, in the first one, it didn't really bother me. There was one that was just like, that was kind of like 5th grade humor there, but the rest of it didn't really bother me so much in the first one. But the fact that it wasn't in this one made me realize how much the other one stood out. Like if I didn't read this, the other ones wouldn't have bothered me so much, except for that one. I forget which one it was too, but it was one that was just pretty like, all right, that was a little raunchy. But when you read this one, it's not in there, so it does make it stand out in book 1 more. So, and you appreciate that it's not in here, So
I guess when I say mature, though, I'm not talking about in terms of adulthood or age level. It seems like just by the panel sequences, it looks like his growth as an artist is kind of coming through, and as a storyteller in this book. And I'm wondering how different it is, since considering it was written, years ago when he was still finding his own way in making these books.
I would say it still has a kind of like a cinematic, or what people call or storyboarding like setup, but I think it might be a little more rigid than the previous one, as far as an organic feel would come across.
I would
Yeah.
say it's the first one, like you never knew what was going to happen the next, which kind of gave it a frenetic pace, which you may or may not have liked. This one, it kind of seems it's a satisfying conclusion of the previous one, but you're not just completely gobsmacked by a new story detail. This is kind of it's the first book is set up all the bizarreness that's going to be there, and this one just kind of follows through with what has now been set up. So I don't know if that's maturity in writing or just the natural course of this being the conclusion. But
And mind you, these are the only two books that I've read by him, because I just got the other one, so I don't really have much to compare it to, other than, yeah, I would say the pacing, I don't know if I would say was rigid, though. I kind of agreed with you for a second, but I feel like the pacing was a little bit better in this one.
No, not the pacing being rigid. More like the panel layout. Like it still has kind of that cinematic thing, but if you look at the paneling layout in both the first and second, there's kind of more uniformity in the paneling on the second one. There's something. I really don't know how to explain it without a side-by-side comparison. But
well, I'm wondering if he's maybe following a tighter structure, something that he's kind of evolved into after doing this enough times, that he's like, okay, this is where I feel like these story beats need to occur.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
Yeah, could be, yeah.
And he might also, even though he may have written out like sort of the plot structure way back when, he might have been working off of feedback he got on the first one too.
Yeah, he might have made some changes in the development of the book itself, even though he had the story written years earlier.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Walter. I'm sorry.
No, you please go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, I was going to say, I know as popular as his first one was, I know a lot of people had more criticisms to levy against it than we ever brought to bear. I mean, everyone here, I'm sure, knows how much of a Narwhal simp I am. But, I think he did. It looks like he listened to a lot of what they said moving forward, and it seems to have improved it overall. But it leads me into one thing I wanted to ask you guys. You all know the character in there, Blowgart, right? The little shrimp journalist dude, conspiracy theorist guy. Did it feel to anyone else that kind of his charm from the first one was lost here in the second one? I don't know.
Yes.
I would say, though, you have to take into the fact that he's mind controlled through almost the entire book, though. So.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't always seem to rob people of their personalities entirely. It just. I guess. I don't know. Whatever. Never mind.
I mean, he does say a line at the end of the book when he's no longer mind controlled that kind of seems like a Blowgart thing to say.
Yes.
Like, we've been abducted, and he's all excited about it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it did also kind of change the one guy. What's the jock?
The swimming guy or the bully guy?
The bully guy, because he's supposed to be the popular guy, and then after he's mind controlled, he's like all meek and like idolizing Spaceman, so he kind of goes from being like Mr. Jock Bully dude to what can I do for you, kind of guy, so changes him a little bit, I guess. So yeah, maybe Moonshine's right. Maybe it was just that he was mind controlled. But I did feel that. I was like, like he wasn't even drawn the same way in certain points. Like in the first one, when he's like yelling through the fence, Narwhal gave it that cartoony feel with his mouth all wide open and stuff.
Yes.
And then there was none of that in this one, really. Like, you know what I mean? Like there was none of those physical cues that went along with his personality.
Well, this is not exactly related, but slightly. I would say that like the first issue is very kind of abstract and madcap, even like just the way things were drawn. And I think some people would say I don't know what you're drawing here. I always didn't have a problem with it. I like the more abstract style, but I think the second one there's much less abstract. Everything that's supposed to be understood is kind of cleanly drawn what it's supposed to be, rather than kind of just abstract shapes and coloring, which you would find maybe not often, but you would find that in the first book, because Narwhal was like, I'm drawing it the way I want it, and you have to figure it out by context. But this one, I think everything pretty much is kind of, it's still the same style, but it's kind of more concrete shapes and stuff for anything that matters in the story. Yeah, except for the spaceships are kind of freaky looking though still, but besides that.
Oh, and Note still looks like Eker from the Muppets.
Could we get some pages to focus on while we talk about these details, Dark Gift? Just anything you feel like showing might be cool.
Yeah, like well, he's not in the book much because he's like captured, but like that last character I just mentioned, this guy, he's still drawn like totally different than the rest of the characters. He's drawn like a cartoon character, like you would see like on a Saturday morning cartoon, whereas the rest of the characters are basically drawn normal, what were we just talking about? I did get a little lost during the fight scene, though, because sometimes, like, some of the characters kind of look the same from a distance. But other than that, like Moonshine said, everything is kind of drawn the way it's supposed to be. Like, these are two of the sirens that they're, like, quote-unquote sisters that are fighting each other because they're under the mind control.
I would say maybe Trisha and Betty get confused since they're both blondes. But other than that...
Yeah, those two guys, I got confused with them. And there was two guys I got confused with, too. I can't remember which ones they were. I figured it out, eventually. I was like, oh, okay, I see the difference. But, like... although the moms are still drawn a little funky. I did like that. When they get picked up in the van and they're like, "Who's that?" She's like, "Soccer mom." she came with the van.
It's almost kind of like the Peanuts, whereas in Peanuts you didn't see adults, but it's in this story adults are always drawn different, whereas like the teenagers and protagonists of the plots are kind of more normal looking, except for obviously Note and Blogart, but.
Yeah, and Note's dad went from being drawn funky to drawn normal when he was mind controlled, which I thought was a good... I don't know if he did that on purpose, but I'd like to think he did. That, like, he... because now he was mind controlled, he was more of a serious character and not just, like, a background parent character, But I did notice that, like, in that scene that I just went through where he's got the gun pointed at her.
So, does it feel disjointed going from the freestyle version approach from the first book to this one? That's a little bit more structured.
Well, I mean, no, because it's subtly different. It's not in your face different.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a feeling you get maybe after you read at the end. He's like, okay, well, this book is a satisfying conclusion, but it felt a little different. So, if you think about it, that's what I would chalk it up to, why it doesn't feel quite the same as the first book.
Yeah, I would say, it was very subtle. Like, it wasn't like, it wasn't like two different styles. It was still Narwhal, you know what I mean? It just seemed like he organized it a little bit better.
it had a I think if we went with Moonshine's earlier description of it, it's it's almost like it's just slightly more in focus, like somebody put their glasses on. You know what I mean? Like there's a little more definition.
We got a lot of world building, I remember, in the first one. Is the second one just mainly tying up loose threads, or are there new things also being explored in this issue?
I would say new things in terms of it actually explains characters and events. Like Trisha is like just sort of there, and we're like, wait, she's in another sponsor. What does that even mean? She gets some character development, and we meet her father and stuff. And the sirens, we get to explain them. We learn what the sirens' motivation for even being on Earth is. There's the two characters in the bet. We learn who the woman is and why she's somewhat tied to the sirens.
Yeah,
but it does leave other questions too, which I like, you know, because it leaves it open to go into a whole other direction. Like, why did she not want them the spaceman and well, I can't think of her name. Julia. Why does she not want them dead? They never answer that. You know what I mean? So there are still some questions to be answered, but it does give you enough of what you were wondering from the first one. It gives you enough of a answer to each of those questions while still leaving certain things a little vague.
I would say it's a satisfying conclusion. It's like a complete story arc, but there's many loose ends and conflicts and desires that the characters still have right at the end that you could tell another story in this universe very easily. But it doesn't feel, it's definitely not a cliffhanger either. So
no,
it's kind of like it's like the end of a season of a television show.
Yeah, and he could never do another Earthbound again, and you wouldn't really be going like, wow, like I really wish he would have answered that. But if he does do another one and answers the questions that remain, you'd be happy. So it can go either, yeah.
Although I would suggest not calling it Earthbound because now it would no longer make sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say whatever it is, that title was pretty much just for this episode because humans just a backdrop, really.
He's got about 4 or 5 humans with him. They could be Earthbound back, like, you know. Then they could be like the
actual Earthbound. Okay.
He could flip the definition of the title, and like now he's got to go get them and bring them home. You know what I mean? So he could still use it, and it would just be a flip on the definition. You know. So.
You know, honestly, we kind of have a setup for that with. Oh shoot! What's his name? Wiz Kid? Is that it?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
He's the protagonist of this entire. He's the Earthbound one, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not just because he's got people with him, but with just some of the stuff he says near the end too.
Well, I mean, he has motivation now. I mean, he did what he did to save everyone's life. But in the process, he essentially has separated himself from everybody.
So I guess the $1 million question is, how successfully is it all executed? Does it stand up to the original, or does it feel like a downgrade?
No, I think it's on par.
Yeah, it's on par. There's a couple minor trade-offs here and there, which we've mostly already discussed. But yeah, no, it's on par.
As a total package, did you enjoy it as much though?
Yeah, it has the feel of a complete story, which on its own from other stuff I've read, you know, that shouldn't say a lot, but it does.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before we went live, I realized as I was reading book 2 that I've never finished book one because I got lost in the first like few pages. Like, when did this happen? What? So I had to go back and I opened up book one, and there was my bookmark right where I left off. So I literally read the end of book one and then went right into book two, and it just felt like I was like continuously reading the same book. So I almost didn't notice all those subtle changes until like I was able to like go back and flick through the pages and
I would
and
say
catch
the
'em.
changes are noticed. If this was one book, you'd be very hard pressed. It's just because of the first binding in the two different books, and a year-long gap in reading it, that you're probably going to even really any notice these differences.
Yeah.
If a person read this as a single book, which I assume Narwhal is probably going to do in future printings, they probably would be hard pressed to say, "Oh, this is where the first book ended, and here's where the second book started."
Well, now that you've also read the conclusion to the story, is it a good story? Were the characters interesting, engaging? Did that set up a good climax for you that you were all happy with? Or did you feel any disappointment at all reading through the entire 2 issues?
The only disappointment I felt was that I was occasionally thought in the back of my mind that 499 exists. So.
The sirens were. I was like, I would have liked a little more insight into them, and not even their backstory. It was nice to get that little glimpse, towards the end of the book, like their motivation and stuff. Like that was cool, but like even when like they had a little more action in this book, like it was more. I don't know. I feel like we only got to know 2 out of the 4.
Yeah.
I wish that we could have got to know a little bit of the other 2, So.
No, I mean, I do like though, like when they're with the soccer mom cars, like we have a drive. It's like there's a joke. I guess that's the only sex joke in the entire second book. But then he's like, "No, it's what you call revenge. That's why we're here." It's kind of interesting how it's just kind of plainly stated by them.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I would love to go into a 499 tangent now that I see that it's getting so much hate, but I'll bite my tongue. 499 focused on a lot of subtlety, and I guess there isn't as much in Earthbound. Everything is a bit more on the surface and overt.
No.
Okay. Could you explain?
No.
There's some nuance here. I think what makes it more engaging, beyond the color palette choices, is I can't think of any other word aside from a little bit of whimsy to it, but it's not whimsical. It's just kind of his weird style.
I would say from reading all of Narwhal's books, he never directly tells you what the story is about. It's like you got to figure it out on your own. Nothing is on the nose, but if you read it and think about it, it's generally pretty obvious what's going on.
Yeah.
Treat you as an adult. I mean, it's not going to hold your hand through what everyone's thought process is. Now, no one's going to say, "Oh, this makes me sad," directly to the audience. You either by looking at the drawings or the dialogue or their actions, you realize this is something they're sad about, or as an example.
What did you interpret the story to be, Moonshine?
What do you mean? What did I interpret it to be?
Well, you said that if you read it as an adult and nothing is on the nose and it's nuanced, what did you read into Earthbound? What did you take away from it?
I don't know.
Like, do you mean like when you're asking that question? Do you mean like what it when you say it's about? Like, are you talking about like thematically?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like he was saying that there's subtext in Narwhal's storytelling, and
I mean, I would say thematically, it's a redemption story. It starts off you thinking it's just like a let me get back home type of thing, but then you kind of learn some things about these three characters and their history, and it kind of turns into a redemption story. Even though at the end they still think he screwed them over. Well, no, I guess no. They find out, right?
No,
got the
they
notes.
know. They still think he screws them over because they don't get to read the note. The captors read the note.
Oh, they don't read it to them.
Yep.
I
No,
get.
they don't.
Yeah, you're right. They don't. That's more, I guess. If that was like a
Although, but
movie or TV
it's-
show.
It's pretty obvious. I mean, they know that he left to save their lives, so they know that because the captor essentially tells them that it's like, oh, you're all safe because he escaped fast enough that the kill switch signal didn't reach you.
Right. Yeah. But I guess as they're reading, because when I read it, like you're reading like the boxes as and you know it's the guy reading the note, but they're showing panels of them doing stuff. I was thinking that they were listening to him read it, but no, I guess that would be more of like if it was a show or a movie, it would be more of a voiceover as you go through these different montage scenes, right? I get you.
Which is kind of shitty if you think about it, because the Whiz Kid leaves that note for Julia, and she never gets all that information.
Right.
So there's an example of information you're given, but it's not on the nose. You have to think about what you just saw and realize, oh, she didn't actually even read any of this or hear any of this.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, and through the first half, you kind of get some interplay amongst the three main guys as they are in the first book. Whiz Kid, Spaceman, and Julia Roberts.
And that's another. Yeah, well, go ahead, finish that. What you're thinking first.
Right, and I was going to say, even digging a little deep, the only thing with the information you have that you can confirm, like you can make guesses, but the only thing you can really confirm is they're all honestly at odds with each other. So you're trying to think as this contest, as they label it at the start, keeps going. Well, is Spaceman like a total dick? Is he out for blood? Is Whiz Kid gonna stab people in the back just to keep on the down low? And then, what's Julia Roberts doing? It's kind of cool, and it explores it more in this book, and you don't get a satisfying ending. Not in the way that it's narratively satisfying, but like we were talking about that ending, it's not satisfying for the characters, I guess.
Yeah, it's not a fairy tale ending, definitely.
Yeah, it's not all wrapped up and tied up in a bow at the end. You know what I mean? Like it's still for them, life is still a mess. But the one that I don't want to spoil this book, but I think it actually happened. Well, no, you know about this in the first book. All right, so we know that they haven't aged, but he has, right, from the first book.
Yes, 4 years, I think.
So did anybody else get like a Anakin Skywalker vibe going on there?
Oh, Padme and Anakin.
Padme and Anakin thing going on there. Like
well,
that
I would reference another movie, Princess Bride. I would say the IOU line means something else. It doesn't literally mean I owe you. It means I love you whenever they say that to each other.
Mm-hmm. But they were the same age. I get him.
Well, I assume he had a crush on her, but she probably didn't have a crush at him originally. It's just when they re-met, now they're the same age. That's when the feelings develop, which of course is set up throughout the story that they're like awkwardly dating kind of on a date.
Yeah, like they almost like touching. They were like rubbing fingers in the car, like what like teenagers do, like when they're trying to like, do I hold her hand? Do I not hold her hand?
And then you got the classic, he kisses her, her face is, wait, what's going on? And then you get another panel where she's, kissing back. So you understand this is how she feels as well.
Yeah.
And again, these things aren't told to you. You have to read it and think, and you understand this.
Interesting.
He's good at that.
I remember that actually from his essay where he talked about how to um, uh, convey the moment and intensity through subtlety in the way that the panels are established. So yeah, it seems like that technique has come a long way for him. It's something that I know he's been interested in exploring. And the
I
way
mean,
that
for
he does
some
his
of the
books.
more mundane things, like we know in the past their ship was somehow attacked and he escaped and fell on Earth. They got captured. So I mean, it's not specifically said, but it's kind of suggested maybe at that time sponsors were trying to recruit them for the Grand Prix, perhaps, but for whatever reason they weren't in it, or they really wanted WizKid, or this is never said, but you kind of get this feeling because they seem to know a lot about the Grand Prix and not wanting to be in it. And some reason they were split up because their ship essentially exploded in the past.
Yeah, Spaceman in particular. At first, you wonder if it's just his personality type, like he's just kind of a bloodhound. But he in particular is really into this competition. Uh, and for those who don't know, and I don't know why you're here for the second volume if you don't know, but a quick little recap: they are forced to recruit these four. Oh shoot, what are they called again? Sirens.
Sirens. Yeah.
So they're forced to recruit these girls called the Sirens for this Grand Prix that we know honestly very little about. I mean, we'll kind of get an idea, but we don't know.
Although, from what WizKid says about if you're recruited, you're almost certainly going to die. Is the way
right. It's kind of like the movie Battle Royale. Is almost what I picture. It's be very grim, or like Running Man, or stuff like that. But the two that are sent down, Julia and Spaceman, are in a contest to see who can nab the most of these girls, of whom there are four, and the one who gets the most is ostensibly going to win their freedom. So they're slaves. Like that's how it starts. They're slaves, and they're competing to see who's going to get freedom. And that's why there's kind of this desperate tension in the first story, because you think they're out for blood. I mean, if your freedom's on the line, what would you do? How far would you go?
I would say Spaceman does show moments where like he clearly cares for Julia, and I think he tolerates WizKid because Julia cares about him. It doesn't seem like he likes WizKid at all. I think he might even hate him. But
yes, yeah, and there's a lot of respect lost there from there. I guess you could say flashback we have. There isn't much of it, but it is there. But yeah, that part of Spaceman, though, isn't clear until this second volume. Like, all you have is questions about his motivation in the first one. That's because I guess you could say he seemed almost one-dimensional there. Like he's the most blunt of any of them in his planning. He always talks about how he hates the cunning ones and that, and he's not stupid, but he's just he wants to be the one that's on the nose about everything. He wants everything clear cut, and he's very brutal in his planning and actions. And this is outlined a bit in the weapons we brought up earlier. They're called the R-type, which affects people's free will. If you pay close attention, his is like a handgun, and he uses that indiscriminately and with almost reckless abandon, whereas Julia is a sharpshooter, and she's always planning her targets with a lot more care and strategy.
Yeah, he's like the bull in the china shop, and she's like the surgeon.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, it also kind of like that's true, Julia, but it almost brings it to another level with Whiz Kid, where it's like, why aren't you going to shoot him? It's like, oh, I will shoot her. But after she learns this information, and then they can ask her what she just learned.
Yes, I love it. There's kind of a running gag within the second half where people just think he's a coward all the time too, and he plays into it. He's like, yeah, and I totally was retreating to get a better shot or to do this. I love that part.
Yeah, I mean, Whiz Kid is clearly like almost. It's not told to you, but it's pretty clear that he's like mentally like a genius. He can plan all these things intricately to get the exact results he wants.
Yeah, I don't have a one-to-one comparison to point him to in other works of fiction, but if anyone here is a fan of One Piece, I guess you could make him kind of like Usopp, although he's not as skilled a sharpshooter as Usopp would be.
But probably as cowardly either.
Yeah.
I would say, just going back to that one scene though, where he's like, "I'm going to let her get the information so I could." I think part of him also wanted to watch her get changed. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
It's interesting that all of you took away so much from this book. It sounds like a very dense read, and a lot of characterization being done.
And it doesn't feel like that as you're reading it. Like you don't
it's
feel
kind of like you probably know this with Foreign Agent. It feels like watching a movie. You can be presented a lot of information, but it's over in 2 hours or whatever.
Right.
If it's a good movie, it doesn't feel like a slog to get through it.
Right.
I would say too, though, if anything we've said is discouraging anyone when we talk about it being a dense read, we're not talking. If I were to relate this to fiction novels, this isn't like Stephen Donaldson's Thomas Covenant series.
Yeah, it's not a chore.
Right. It's not like philosophy laden, and you have to be some undergrad to even begin to grasp what's going on here. But it'd be more like A Song of Ice and Fire in terms of that cognitive level. Although I would say George's work is still more nuanced. But this is still way more than you would expect to get from something of this kind.
From this kind of medium.
No. If I were to say it like that, that'd come off kind of elitist. I just mean when you hear about what this is about, and then you actually read it, it's more than that. The way this was kind of advertised on the first volume is, you got these people that are forcibly recruited to forcibly recruit other people for this bloodbath sport event. Yeah, that you don't go into that expecting anything too deep. You just don't.
Although I guess you could kind of say the premise is similar to Running Man, and of course Running Man has lots of kind of thoughts processes of like, what would a society be like, and how would you change it, sort of things.
Yeah,
True.
that's why I said Running Man earlier.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. But even there, if you think about it, unless you actually watch or read it, depending on which medium you were going for in that instance, the way it's advertised or marketed to you, I don't think most people would have expected what they got which makes it a more satisfying experience.
Yeah, it's like I'll punch your stomach and break your damn spine. That's like all it is.
Yes. Yeah, you just think maybe mindless fun, really, or surface level entertainment. And it's not just that.
Yeah, it's a nice surprise to have. Like, I get. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I guess we said pretty much everything that we could without getting into spoilers. Did we want to do final thoughts?
I guess. I
Okay.
would say it's a satisfying conclusion if you like the first book. It's not quite as madcaps, which is I thought was kind of a loss, but I understand
Yeah.
what it needed to say. This was probably the appropriate way to write this book. But I think I said the first book was probably one of the best graphic novels that I read in the last couple of years. I wouldn't say that about this book, but I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with it. It does what it should do, I guess. I just kind of the whimsy of the first book really was enjoyable to me.
Yeah, absolutely. As a fan of stuff like Look Around You, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that kind of thing. There is a level of whimsy and absurdity in those that I really find myself attached to, and that's why I loved the first volume. And this, like you said, it's not at all bad, but there's these minor trade-offs that keep them kind of at the same level of quality overall. So there's like minor disappointments when it comes from going from the first one to the second, and then some other stuff that's an improvement in the second. So, it evens out.
I would say probably most people probably thought the first book was too odd and strange, so they probably would actually like the second better. You have to be a certain type of person to like the absurdity that much.
Which is why I'm often so starved when it comes to entertainment, because that's my jam, man.
Well, like I said, I think, like you said, if he puts this in one book, I don't think people would miss that because it'll all be in one volume. And I feel like the second, like you said, this is a second act, right? This is like, Act 1, and now you have Act 2. I feel like the second act needed to be a little more structured to answer those questions and get those details and stuff that like make it that like you were saying, Kriegler, like the trade-offs. So you had to kind of lose some of that like madcap stuff a little bit. But if it's in one book, you won't feel like there's a loss at all. So I think if anybody hasn't read either one book and they get and he puts this in one volume, I think people would be satisfied all around, especially if they enjoy all of it, which is kind of like how I am. Like I didn't necessarily miss the madcap whimsy of the first one and the second one, but then again, I also did have to read the second half of the first book. I skimmed through the first half of it and then read the second half and then went right into the second book. So for me, I basically read it as one book, So maybe that's why I wasn't as disappointed. But I guess if you waited a year or however long it was to get this and then read it and had those memories of the first book when you read it, you know what I mean? I can see why you would miss that, So
it's okay. I've learned to live with the loss. And not just from this work.
You can't capture lightning in a bottle twice. So okay, so thank you, everybody. That was really insightful and really, really interesting, all the comments. So I appreciated it, and I'm sure the audience did as well.
One last thing, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yes. So I would, as a personal recommendation, if you like any of his stuff, I recommend getting his sketchbooks because those I think are actually some of his best stuff a lot of the time. They're a collection of random stuff, but also some short stories, I guess you could say. And he does the same thing in those that he that he does here, where there's some hidden structure and nuance to him.
I have to say, I especially like the next chapter of the Naked Samurai. That was very good.
Yes. Yep. Both in really both at the end of Earthbound and the one in the sketchbook.
I also like the style of the Naked Samurai actually is different slightly. It's more of a kind of a standard cartoon style than the standard Narwhal style. So if you really can't get over the Narwhal style, if he eventually does the Naked Samurai, you might enjoy that. Naked Samurai is like a complete package. You might actually be interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, does he have other Naked Samurai stories in the sketchbooks?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
Oh, now
And
I have
other
to get
stories. I need to find a way to get the first one. I believe I have number 2. I think somewhere.
Yeah, there's the 2019, a 2020, and is this one 2021 or this one doesn't have the year on it, but there's a 2019 and a 2020 sketchbook.
Well, something for Narwhal completionists to hunt down on eBay. So thank you again. It was great hearing all of your thoughts. And at this point, I'd like to bring on, we have a guest artist with us tonight. He's going to talk about some of his current projects, as well as some of his earlier work. And I'm very interested to get to know him. I Googled him a little bit and didn't find a lot of information. So it'll be a nice meet and greet with our guest tonight. So everybody, please welcome Joe Ball.
Hey.
Greetings.
Hello.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, I got to hear the tail end of y'all's discussion there, and it sounds like an interesting book. I haven't read it yet, but yeah, dude. There's probably not much on Google on me because my real name's like John Joseph Ball. Like that's what a lot of things you'll see me under as well. So like, you could turn up results from family members too because of the name. So
yes,
like, I've got like an uncle and a dad and many people with the exact same name as me with very little variation. So
please provide a list of close relations, work history, references. So we need all those things for comic book credentials.
yeah.
So I told Well-Read the first book I know you did is Superhero, but I don't know if there's other projects you did before that.
I mean, I've been doing indie work off and on for, since I was like right out of high school. Did a lot of graphic design work in between, basically just one of those, you take whatever you can get to just work yourself up in the environment and have at least something to put on the resume and show your skill level a little bit. But yeah, I did some work for Fortress Publishing. They're like out of Pennsylvania. That was like one of the very first gigs I did, and I was like so excited to just get asked to do something that I did that stuff for like $5 a page. Like I basically did it free. But you're also talking like the early 2000s, so it was really tough to get noticed then. Outside of you could occasionally pick something up at a convention or something. It's just the means of connecting with people were it was just different how the industry worked back then in terms of trying to get your foot in the door. But yeah, I worked for a lot of small publishers. Pestilent Clothing was a company I did a lot of design work for all their shirts and stuff. But yeah, and then I had been submitting and working in comics off and on for like, nearly like 18 years. And I had ran a few comic book shops that me and my business partner owned. And then eventually, I just got so soured on comics as a whole right around like 2015. I was like, things are just getting awful. And like, I was starting to see it on Twitter too, like a lot of other people were. But I had, started a Twitter account just to kind of try to get the word out more on stuff with the shop. Like, I wasn't thinking, I thought, I'll look at all these comic creators thinking I was going to see all this fun comic book stuff. And then it was just a lot of depressed leftists like yelling at people. And I wasn't too enthusiastic. I was starting to be completely drained on the industry as a whole. And then CG kind of ramped up and kicked off, Zach kicked off, and that's when I started just getting back on it, even though I'd already been doing it for years and years. It was like, how many more years do I waste on this? But at the same time, it was like, do I waste all those years of work? So I just hopped right into that world with everyone else, and I met Wenger somewhere along the way, and he asked me to do Super Harlem, and I didn't have anything else going on at the time, so yeah, I just jumped on it.
What was that?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What was that collaboration like, working with Wenger?
Oh, it was very easygoing. I mean, it's Wenger, so it was like he had a good chunk of a story done because he had done it as like a webcomic previously. So I had like some base to kind of work off of. I'd say, maybe about like 28 to 30 pages worth of was what he had. So I had kind of like the realm of how he was seeing this, even if it was in like his cartoony style, it gave me an idea. So he just basically let me run wild with it, and I just did all the page layouts and everything else, and handed it off to him, and that was that. It was very, very carefree, very quick and easy. I did work, he took work, passed it on to the next person, and then it got done. So
yeah, I have to, for a very bizarre comic concept, this comic did very well. It was like, what, 30,000 or something?
Somewhere in that realm, yeah, between, I think, the two covers he did.
Yeah.
I think if you added them together, it hit within there, yeah.
Was there ever talk of a follow-up to Super Harem?
Back when there was, but after issues with Aldrake, I think he just probably needed to take a break from everything. I don't, exactly know, so I don't want to speak for him. But yeah, he's still occasionally doing some stuff and getting back into it. I had hit him up not too long ago to do a Super Harem swimsuit artwork for a project that other creators doing. So I got permission to do that. So you'll kind of get to see it revamped and brought up to date, but it'll just be one image.
Cool.
Yeah.
And do you have a regular gig, Joe? I'm just kind of curious, or do you try to draw full time whenever you can?
Yeah, basically my gig is drawing all the time. So yeah, I'm usually working for somebody else in the day and then myself at night. So that's pretty much how that goes.
Okay. Constantly practicing then. That's good.
Oh yeah. Because I'm doing a book for Yellow Flash right now. So, there was some hours dedicated to that, obviously, some desk hours. I did a short story for Passions for Drawings fantasy magazine recently. That was, 7 or 8 pages I had to crunch out. You're just going to see me all over the place this year on projects, even if my contributions, only 8 or 10 pages.
How did that work out where you ended up working with Yellow Flash? I was going to ask about your other projects first, but since you dropped that little tidbit, I'm curious.
Well, we both kind of knew of each other from those early CG days. But he had, gotten kind of like a YouTube on-air relationship with Umbrella Guy. And I had known Umbrella Guy from the early days of CG. And we had talked about doing a book and stuff. Didn't come to fruition, but it wasn't because we bumped heads or anything. It was just, other life circumstances came into play. But so me and Tug were always friends. We were always friendly with each other, And he had, Yellow Flash had been contemplating doing a book for a while and had already got a few references to hit me up. And then Tug told him the same thing, and he said, yeah, Tug said to hit up Joe Ball, so you're the guy I'm coming to on it. And it's going to be a lot more anime manga heavy. It's not going to look like my typical style, but it will still, I think, sort of feel like my work, even though it's completely different than what you guys are used to seeing.
Does Yellow Flash have a mailing list up for that, or is that still in the works?
No, I think he's looking towards spring to do the full launch, so it'll be somewhere in that realm, within the next few months. But that's that's partially just my general idea. Don't take it as like gospel. He could
Yeah.
change his mind.
I mean, you're kind of like the hired artist. It's not your project, right? So.
Yeah, I don't know his thought process on every last detail, but I know enough to say I think that's a good general range of comfort, you know, to say that's probably when he wants to do it. Like, I don't think he'd be upset for me for saying that or nothing. But yeah, so that'll be cool. He's shown a little bit of work off from it on Flashcast, and I think he even shared on his YouTube timeline at one point some of the concept work. But other than that, he hasn't really put much of it out there yet, because he's, you know, trying to keep it kind of on the down low and just sip it out to people right now. But we got a really good colorist on it, Jaro. He's doing just absolute miracles with it. Like, I know I'm getting off topic, but I have to praise him, because like I can hand the guy like that's a piece of artwork that's like, it's me, but it's manga, so it's a little different than what people are used to, and I can say make it look as animated and alive as possible and hand it to him, and he knows everything to take out, everything to get rid of, everything to keep, everything to enhance, and it's just created really good results, really high-end looking work. So I'm excited for people to you know, get a look at that once Flash goes public with it.
Is Flash handling all the writing duties, or is somebody else in charge of that?
As far as I know, he is. I'm sure he's, you know, reaching out to people to get their opinions, you could say. But yeah, he's pretty much the dude in charge of the story part. He gives me like a basic idea of kind of what he wants. I draw it up, and he fills in the gaps from there. That's the thing. A lot of people come to me, and sometimes they don't want to have to explain every detail of a setting, and they can say, here's a general idea, can you just rough it out and see if we're on the same page? And 90% of the time we are. You know, there will be occasional adjustments, but that's fine. That's normal.
Is it your preference to get scripts like that where you get to pretty much fill in the story mostly yourself, or do you like to have things guided for you a little bit more when you're drawing off somebody else's script?
I'm pretty open to either. I think if a person feels they need to do that, go ahead and do it, because that tells me that they do feel very specific, and I would rather have them be very specific the first time than to have to go back and do a bunch of changes after the fact. So, and I generally will tell people that up front, like, you tell me the level you need, we'll kind of do a little test run here and dictate how close we're hitting with each other, and then we can take it from there, essentially. And most of the time, you know, you find a good middle ground.
So one of the projects that you have coming up, I believe it's fulfilling right now, is Bullet Maker. I'll just quickly show it here. So this raised 18,000. And is it something that you worked on right after Super Harem, or were there any other projects that you worked on before this one?
I had done a sample, like a few sample pages for it towards the tail end of Super Harem, and then we kicked it into high gear and knocked out, I'd say, a little past half of it, and then there was a little hiatus phase till they were ready to pick back up on it, and then we bashed out the other half, I don't know, I'd say towards the end of that year. So, yeah, it's a 48-pager, as far as I know. My part of it's a 48-pager. There's still a lot more to it, because they're bulking in some other sample stories in the back. But, yeah, so it took place within that realm, and then I was doing something else in between too. I'm sorry. The Nightwalker book for Malin, that kind of came in towards the tail end of this, so I was starting on that as I was finishing this. Like, things kind of all overlap within a few months of each other.
I don't think I'm familiar with that book, Nightwalker. Was it part of one of his Graveyard Shift campaigns?
Yeah, it was the supplemental for Graveyard Shift 3, I believe.
Okay, cool.
if I remember correctly. You guys got to understand, my brain's trying to be in 1,000 places at once, so I'm gonna mess some some details up every once in a while.
Yeah, it was 3
Yeah.
though. You got that
No.
right.
Yeah. That was a good story, by the way.
Yeah, that was kind of a little, a mishmash between, like a base from one writer, and then Rob kind of going in and adding his flavor to it as a writer. You had a little Mark Polton, little Rob, little John. So all three guys kind of, got their hands into it to some degree, even though it was, the percentages were different for each guy.
And,
So
and that was the Batman-like character, if I'm recalling correctly.
yes, yeah. So, but I was right in the midst of having a baby right when that happened too. So like, I was trying to keep the pace going on books, and then had to go to the hospital out of the blue one day, forgetting that, like, you've got a pregnant wife here. You're drawing so much, you're forgetting that there's like a baby about to pop out any day now. So right in the middle of like Nightwalker, we had to do the hospital thing, so that put me behind just a little bit. But Malin was pretty cool about it. I think he understood.
I would hope so. And congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she's 1 now. It's hard to believe that was like a little over a year ago. But the kids' ages are easier to remember, so that's how I can correlate what was happening at the time.
Yeah, time really
Yeah.
flies, especially when you're as busy as you are.
Yeah, it does. It's scary sometimes. It bothers me, but that's all besides the point. Yeah, Bullet Maker. It's like a post-apocalyptic tale. It takes place like 50 years after the apocalypse. So I if you guys know that in the biblical, because this book isn't like 100% biblical, it's just like the themes are incorporated, you could say. But the apocalypse has happened, and now we're in that phase afterwards, like that 2,000-year phase between when the devil gets one last loosen. This is supposed to be 50 years after Armageddon took place. So you'll see things like beat up cars and rusted out things, but you also see guys looking very Wild West. So much of it takes place out in like Sierra Nevada type area. Stuff like
Does it
that.
kind of have like a Mad Max feel to it, or?
A little bit, yeah. There's a touch of that. It's like Wild West, Mad Max, / video games, you could say, too. Like Gat's so inspired by a lot of anime and manga and video games. There's little sprinkles of all of that in there. So
Does it have a hero, or is it mainly just villains? Just going by the art, it looks like everybody's pretty menacing in this story.
yeah, I get that. I'm trying to think of how to phrase it, because I don't want to say everyone's shades of gray, because that's not necessarily accurate. But they're mostly shades of gray. There's a lot of bad and very little good. But the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, that's the 4 Wild West guys you see together there. I'd say those are the good guys in the story, or the closest thing to, because they're still rough around the edges themselves. You can't be a demigod of war and be too polite. So, yeah, there's good and bad. It's just you're in a world that's dominated by bad. It's it's the devil's world right now. It's just like it is in our current time, if that's what you want to go by. But that's kind of the setting you're in, and things are very archaic. Technology's at a minimum again, and being able to make bullets as a commodity, being able to understand how to have firepower, how to have explosives, how to have weaponry, and blacksmithing is like a very big deal in this comic.
Did you have a really structured script to work from, or did you get to inject a lot of your own perspective into the panels that you drew here?
Both, I'd say. It was there was a clear, defined script with a lot of details, but we also went through a bunch of that way prior, like mashed out and bashed out a lot of fine details to kind of make sure things were the way that Gat and Steve at the time wanted it to be. So in that, they also would we'd kind of run into little moments where like something would either click in my brain as an idea and I would just pitch it. If they liked it, great. If not, that was fine too. Or we would need like a little way to piece something together, and occasionally I would have a remedy for that, just from a biblical perspective, because I've read so much extra biblical books, and I enjoy that kind of stuff. You know, I've listened to thousands of hours of YouTube biblical information, so it let me kind of sprinkle in more of that from areas where people might recognize it if they're also into Bible lore, I guess you could say.
So would you call it a faith-based comic, or just maybe sprinkled with references, but not too heavy-handed?
Yeah, exactly. It's there's similar themes, but it's not accurate, if that makes sense. You know, it's like cherry picking little things that are fun to work with for a story, but by no means does it mean that the overarching theme is something related to like a real accurate biblical story, if that makes sense. So
Right. Cool. So when are you expecting this book to fulfill?
they're in the process right now. It's probably literally shipping out as we speak. So I know Gat's packing and bagging them and getting them done. So those
Do you know
should
how much
be.
will-
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I cut you off. You go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so they should start showing up to people, I'd say, within the next month or so, just depending on what happens with the mail. Mail does weird things in tax season again, even though folks might not think about that. Like, just ask a UPS driver. Like, it's November to December is hell, and then again from about March to April gets weird for them. So we'll see. I think that's a reasonable realm, though, to say they're going to be in the mail at this point. I've already seen Gat tweet about it, so we know it's all in the works. The comics are done. They're at his house.
Yeah, I think he. Hey, can we go to the latest update?
Sure.
Do
Oh.
you know how long it's going to be in demand for?
No, I'm not sure about that. That's completely up to what they decide.
Oh, I guess the update is only for backers. Well, I just wanted to ask Joe about this because I've seen this actually in a number of campaigns. They specifically mentioned Mixem, but I've seen a lot of campaigns say there's like a paper shortage, so like book printing's being delayed. Is this something you're familiar with, or?
I mean, there's been a lot of talk about it. I think it might just depend on maybe specific papers that aren't made in as large a quantities, because I know tons of people that are having zero issues with printing whatsoever. Like a lot of people that are doing perfectly fine, and their books are high quality and they're high-end products. And it's like, these guys are having literally zero issue. They just send the printer an order and they get books. Like, it's literally become that simple. Like, we're in a golden age for printing, even if people don't know it because they don't deal in printing. We're in this inexpensive golden age where everything's super easy. So,
well, I think Moonshine hit it on the head, because there is a paper shortage, and the only reason why I know that is just from working in the office. We used to order cases of copy paper, and now the guy's like, I can only give you a half a case, and I'm like,
yeah,
all right, I hear you, but I think it might just be Mixem, because I know Don Chin hasn't had a problem, and he uses Comics Wellspring, and he hasn't had any printing issues as far as delays go, I should say. I don't know about anything else, but I'm just saying.
think too, like, if you got your order in early enough and just understood that it was going to take a while, like because of paper, then it's not going to seem like there was a paper issue, because you never had an expectation of getting it any faster to begin with.
I mean,
So-
I'm not shitty on them. I think it's only like a month late. That's essentially not late at all. They just mentioned something I've seen other campaigns talk about. Is like, is this a thing, or is it just people sending their print files in too late, or what's
It's
going
probably
on?
both. You know, it's probably a mishmash of the two. But yeah, by no means is there not necessarily a paper shortage. I just know it's been a bigger issue for some than others, but I don't really know the details of why, like what the difference was. You know, I couldn't.
Well,
tell you.
I think the thing is, like a year or two ago, you would send your files in, and the turnaround time was like 2 to 3 weeks, and now I think it's taking more like 4 to 6 weeks or something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
You have to plan ahead a little more than you used to, it seems. So.
Yeah.
Shoot, the old days it was 3 months.
And
That
the short people say it's a paper shortage. Like Joe said, it's really not a paper shortage. It's probably just a supply chain thing. Like it's just probably taking them longer to get the paper. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
and
of all the crap that's going on with like truckers and ships out
Well,
in
from what I
ports
know
for like
about
weeks.
the paper industry, a lot of it used to come in from China, so that might be the problem, just the shipping problem, because there's not as much domestic paper being made anymore. That possibly could be the problem. I don't know.
Could be.
well, at this point, anything that relies on a global network, which is fucking everything we can think of, it's we're just running into some bumpy roads that we're not used to. It's really hard to tell if this is a way to force people to think a new NAFTA is a good idea again, or if it's just governments playing games with each other. Like, it's so hard to tell what's going on from the outside because all we know is there's a paper shortage. And the Chinese are standing around being like, I don't know. And America's like, I don't know what the problem is. And there's all these boats sitting out in the harbor. They're like, it's right there, guys. Come on.
Just bring it on in.
I don't want to get into all that because it's not exactly my area of expertise by any means. But it's just sometimes I think like some of the stuff so like on the nose and obvious that.
Yeah,
Like,
the only thing I know is I occasionally have lumber cut down, and it's like, oh, the price is nothing because no one wants it for paper anymore. So.
Yeah.
So I usually try to make this channel of the chat and for the chat, and I am going to highlight Vic because he's begging for attention here. He's saying, this is a War Campaign Presents comic, Kick This Falconer. From our discussion so far, it sounds like you work for anybody and you're not too worried about factions and groups. Is that pretty much the gist of it, Joe, or do you feel like there's more to some of the scripts that you decide to work on and people that you decide to collaborate with?
It just all depends, like at this point, we went through a spat in CG where if you've been around here the last 5 years, like there's been ups and downs with who gets along with who like every other week. So at a certain point when you're already working with like 5 people that all hate each other, you just let them know that, we sign contracts, business is business. And I own my own studio, so you guys know what's up. Like I'm here for me, myself, and I. And I don't mind working for people that dislike each other. You could say, like it's just a reality everyone knows, but they also know that like it's one of those things where someone goes, well, I've never had a problem with him, so I'm not going to worry about that thing. That's basically everybody's approach with me. So they're like, hey, he's cool with me, so I'm not too concerned with it. And
I think that's basically obvious if you're working on Graveyard Shift 3 and Bullet Maker at the same time. I think that explains it right there. So
yeah, I've got no legitimate beef with anybody. Even if somebody would think I would, I don't. It's so far off my radar to worry about those kind of things because I literally have to take care of children and work 24 hours a day, and that in itself consumes so much of my focus that like unless it's the Cincinnati Bengals, I have no other release. There's no other entertainment for me at this point. All I've got is football, and occasionally something else will surprise me that I enjoy. But right now, that's the only thing in life that really I can sit back and just not have to focus on everything else and enjoy it.
Yeah. And like you said, Vic, it's business is business. And I think if people are willing to pay and they're not going to cheat you, there's nothing wrong with working for them.
Which is what Well-Read tells himself every night on the street corners.
Oh,
Exactly.
good Lord.
And for me on this show, I mean, I want to support artists. So I'm not worried about labels or factions either. I just want to make sure that creative people are getting a platform and their work is getting exposure.
I love your work, Joe. By the way, I really do like highly rendered stuff. It's just my cup of tea.
Oh well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
I'm glad to see this is still. I thought I missed this. I'm glad to see it's in demand. I'm going to try to grab this. That's why I asked how long do you think they might keep it in demand for? Because I want to try to grab it.
As far as I know, they always keep their stuff in demand, just in perpetuity. So since it's
I missed
shipping now,
Vestige 2. If you go to Vestige 2, it says it's in demand, but if you actually click and open up the page, there's no tiers to back. So it says it's in demand, but there's nothing to back. So I missed Vestige 2.
You could comment and ask. I assume Ro or Gat might get back to you and say when they expect to close it. I don't know.
It could possibly be to like once the copies sell out, they just remove the tiers. I don't know for a fact, but I know that they do over order. So there's still books available either way. Even if something doesn't work there, just hit up Gat. I'm sure.
Yeah, and then I did mention I gave the book a shout out in the beginning on this Comicsgate news show that I did, but then when I launched Lightbringer, I kind of stopped promoting because I was doing everything else for that book.
Yeah,
and I had mentioned to Gat like if you guys wanted to come on and talk about it, and then I was like, I think that closed. I was like, I think I missed out, and I felt bad. So maybe I can still get you guys to come on.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Just hit some people up, and we all kind of do the best we can in terms of scheduling to be reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I guess the next thing to bring up though is your project. And this must have been exciting for you because it sounds like it's something that you're pretty much handling every aspect of. Death is the other campaign you have on Indiegogo. And this is your first, and it's all you. It sounds like art and writing duties. So tell us about that experience. How did it feel doing your own book from start to finish?
Well, I'm not finished yet, but aside from that, in terms of the story, I have to figure it out. But yeah, the art's still in process. That's all I'm saying. It's one of those things where I think I prefer it to just about anything else. I'm sure most people would say that outside of a minority. They just don't like having to do so much stuff, which I get because I don't necessarily like doing all the work. But at the same time, this is something that I just want my way on the first time. So I'll pay out some flats and get some people to do some flats and things like that for me. But outside of that, it's pretty much a my way or the highway type book where if it does good and people really enjoy it and take to it, then that'll keep me enthused to go ahead and keep it moving along. But it'll be an experiment to see if people like what I want to bring to the table in terms of a story. It's basically I think we all do what we think is good, if that makes sense. It's like, well, I want to do what I consider good when I enjoy other people's content. So that's kind of the perspective I came from on it. Like, obviously, I've never done a book that's completely 100% me, so nobody will have like an exact idea of how that'll turn out. But I'm pretty confident in it because it's partially something I've just been working on for quite a while, and it's like that baby project where I just feel very confident that that people will like what they get for the money.
I always say if you like something, there's got to be at least 100 people out there that like it too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's got little influences towards things I like. I mean, you can pick out some of the on the nose stuff. Like Dude with the Giant Sword. Clearly, I like Berserk. Like, it's not rocket science, but and I like Transformers and a lot of 80s properties. Surprisingly, I never really liked their stories. I just like them as designs, as characters. And that's kind of rare considering most people like creators. And I'm one of those people over characters. But you'll see a lot more influence from some of the rare things I like where it's the character I lean more towards.
Moonshine, did you have a comment?
No, just keep going.
Oh. So What was the writing process like for you, knowing that you're going to be handling the drawing duties afterwards? Was that a little awkward at first?
I mean, it's like writing anything else when you're first learning how to write fiction, I guess you could say, or anything. I guess it doesn't have to be fiction, but you have like here's what I want for the beginning, middle, and end. Okay, here's how I want these things to hook together. Here's how I want those things that hook together to hook together, because it always gets a little finer than that. It's not quite that archaic and basic, but you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
So you kind of build off of things as you're coming up with other things. And the really good stuff will hit you and you never forget it, whether you wrote it down or not. And some of the okay things you have to write down just to see if they're worth going back to. But yeah, the story went through a few phases early on where I kind of would change my mind on some stuff on how I wanted to approach it and make it all work. But around the time I launched the campaign was when I had already basically went through the beats and figured out, like, this is how I want book one to go completely. Like, this is the stuff I want to be able to get into it, and these are the things that aren't really necessary, that don't need to be in it, and narrow that down. So I'm kind of giving you like a full season rather than like an episode or two. I'm trying to feed that need for people that want to get a good full story, in one night of Netflix, and not necessarily get juiced out over the course of months.
So it's kind of like a full arc of a story, but it obviously can keep going as people are interested and whatnot.
Exactly. If there's never another one, it's good enough, but at the same time, it'll be set up for another one, if that makes sense.
What is kind of in general the story about?
Well, it takes place on another planet completely. Like there's biblical references to a planet where God sent things like Leviathan or Behemoth, or just wild creatures, things we find fossils of, things that we're like, where'd they go? And there's a reference to not God wiping them out, but just sending them away. And I always found that interesting. Like, what if there's just some planet out there with all these wild ass creatures on it from the early days of this planet? So I found that interesting, plus a lot of other biblical stuff, and I kind of tie all that together where it starts off during the flood, and then it kind of just jumps forward to this planet where the bulk of the story will take place. And being that this is a planet where God sent all these kind of creatures too big and wild and consuming for Earth, that's kind of the atmosphere you're going to get there. It's a planet of big and crazy and wild, and everything is still very savage there.
Kind of like the savage land, but a whole planet of it, essentially.
Yeah, a whole planet of just weird looking creatures that don't even they're not even representative of the prehistoric. They're just things I made up that I like. Anyway, so the people that made it through the flood, that lived through this process, they kind of reacclimate on this planet, and that's when things start to collide, and it turns into a war book, basically, because that's what the bulk of it is a war book. So you've got a family that's basically caught in the middle of a bunch of meetings or a clash of other cultures in society that are already in this place. So it's basically like this planet ain't big enough for all of us, even though it clearly is. But so it's a family struggle in the midst of war. That's the easiest way I could put it. It's bad times making good people.
Vic says he thinks one of the references of the monster is from Death Note, the demon from Death Note. Did he get that right, or is it just a coincidence?
No, I like the demon from Death Note, but no, not really. I've only sampled Death Note. I've never read the entirety of it. But I did watch some of the show. Yeah.
Those are awesome, man.
Oh, thanks. That's the thing. That's where like all the graphic design and all the prior work kind of added up. You learn how to use Photoshop to its best of what it can do after you've been doing it for 6 or 8 years. So all these skills I picked up along the way, because originally I just penciled. That's what the industry said. You focus on one part of the trade, and that's what you push yourself as. So I had only been practicing pencils through like high school and those early years right after high school.
Yeah, I don't think I even knew that you colored. I mean, I knew your line work, but I don't. Maybe I've seen your colors and just didn't know it was you. But that's awesome.
Yeah, it's possible. I haven't done a whole lot of color gigs, but it's usually because people want me for my lines first. Color's kind of secondary in terms of what they can get out of me. So if I don't have time to get that involved with it, they're usually happy with just getting a drawing.
Do you draw a lot of inspiration from Walt Simonson?
Not a lot, but I do like his work. It's fun. I would say like John Byrne, Michael Turner, Alex Ross. Like those are some of my big like American-based ones. But I like Otomo a lot. The dude that did Akira. Like that manga is just completely insane. Like those are the things I hope I can live up to someday. Miura, dude that did Berserk, like that's an absolute masterpiece. I don't think there will ever be a greater comic book than Berserk, honestly. But yeah, I've just got inspiration from a whole mishmash of Japanese and American artists, and some European artists too. And then you even get outside of that and start looking at architecture and interior design and all kinds of things, and color palettes. There's just so many things that can inspire a person and make them a better artist, even if it's not directly related to comic books.
So how long? I think this is almost like 200 pages. I remember it's quite a long story here, right?
It's a 300-page book in terms of story. There's it'll go a little over that, but that's just from like fan art and gallery stuff. Like that's why I try to be specific that that's what you're going to get for story, so people don't think they're like.
So this is going to be a behemoth of a book.
Yeah, it's going to be a big book. It's going to be a beast. But
what size are you doing it?
It'll be a 7x10 on the American size, like something that's the closest to an American comic book or graphic novel. And then there's also a manga option that comes in 5x7.5, so it'll fit right on the shelf with all your other standard size manga that we're kind of used to seeing.
They do like the same manga type page, or are you going to make it more kind of higher?
It'll be very typical manga still. It's not going to be like a super high end manga book. It'll be very standard and basic, but it will all be grayscaled on the inside. It'll still read like an American comic though. I don't have the time to try to convert and flip and do all the work you'd have to do to panels to make it read like a real manga.
Which is probably a good idea if you're not certain how to do that, because things could go wrong.
You just have to start from the other direction. Like that's the only way to be sure you're doing it correctly. Because I have done some work where it's got to be done in literal manga form, and I'm jumping back and forth between working on Death and this other project, and like I have to literally start making notes now on pages to make sure my brain keeps drawing the panels in the right direction.
Yeah, because not only that, you have to like keep your 2-page spreads in the right location and stuff. Otherwise, that could be messed up, and that wouldn't work even if it reads the right way.
Exactly. You've got a goof. So yeah, I said I'm not even going to fuss with that aspect. It's more or less so manga people get what they want in a format that they can enjoy, and that's kind of like the value option too. That's an $18 plus shipping buy-in. So that's kind of like the reasonable option for people that aren't interested in a giant hardback book.
But that's $18 for 300 pages of story?
Yeah.
It's a pretty good deal.
That is a good deal.
Very much so, especially at that level of artistic talent. I'm digging the color palette. I actually backed the we can't say back because it's in demand now, right? But I got the color
still, yeah, this one's still in process of being made because December,
Yeah. I'm hoping to have everything in hand by like late October. I really want like the overseas people to be getting their stuff around the same time as everyone else. So
Yeah, I have to say I'm pretty sure I backed the black and white, but looking at those colors, they're really amazing. Because like I know you're black and white, but it's like wow, you can really do the colors too.
well, thank you, man. Yeah, it's one of those things where like I know I'm competent with the other things, but it is a lot of work. Like I had to divvy out some of those flats to some other people, and it's still not enough. I need to give out more. It's just I can't spend every dime on flats either, because I can't hand this to people and say do this for $10 a page. You understand what I mean? Like you
I
can't.
mean, it's the quality you need is more than $10 a page, right?
Yeah, you can't hand this to a colorist that's used to chart. 'Cause most flatters are used to 10 to 15 a page. So if you hand something like this to them, they're like, yeah, no, this is going to cost a lot more than that.
Well, I remember like even when Wanger's Super Harem, it's like they had to find a colorist. It's like you need the colorist that knows how to deal with your line work. So I guess you have to deal with your own line work here.
Yeah.
So.
Now you know how it feels.
I mean, honestly, it's for the best. I still gave probably 4 or 5 colorists. Actually, more than that. I did some tryouts, and I picked like one of the hardest pages to color I had to test them out on, because I knew it was just gonna ramp up from there. And just like it didn't matter how I tried to explain it or make it clear what I wanted, even though it wasn't difficult. Here's 5 colors, just apply them in a way that makes sense. Darks in the back, brights in the front. Typical just color rules. And I just kept getting back like weirder and worse stuff. And I was like, I feel bad because I know these dudes are good. Like, this has got to be me. Like, I know these dudes know what they're doing. Like, this has got to be something wrong with me.
So they don't even know what the foreground and background is, essentially, is what's happening, right?
That's how it felt, because things were coming out so wonky and backwards. But that made me wonder, like, some of it was language barrier with some people, so I understood that, but some of them were Americans, so there was no language barrier. But I don't know. I just wasn't getting the results I wanted, and I didn't want to insult anybody either, because I know the dudes were solid. Like, they're people I've suggested to everyone else, and they've done spectacular work for everyone else. So I was like, it's got to be me. There's no other option here. So I
the final answer, it had to be you, huh?
It had to be. I mean, what else could it be? So I said I'll just color it myself, since like I know what I want anyways, and I'll just make my life easier.
So what's the progress on this 300 pages drawn and colored, and where are you right now?
I'm a little over 200 on the actual line art. There's still give or take around 100, because sometimes I'll tweak or adjust and add a page or take one away elsewhere. But it's right there within that realm. I just crossed over the 200 mark recently. But the color is all still very early. I'd say we're probably only like 60 or so pages into that, because I really got to bunker down. That's kind of where I've had my focus at like the last 2 or 3 months, is just trying to get that caught back up.
But I mean, 60 pages is almost a full book for some people, so that is still decent progress.
Yeah, I mean, I had the luxury of I started this a while back. Like, I was doing little bits of it here and there, so I was lucky that when I launched this, I was already well past like 100 pages. I was about halfway through at that point, so I felt okay about it.
You've doubled that in the meantime, so that's a good pace.
Yeah, it's in the color. The luxury of the color is once your flats are done, rendering does not take that long. So you can, if you have to do flats and render, you're talking like a page or 2 a night. If you just have to render, you're talking like a couple of pages in like an 8-hour shift, you could say. So the chunks of what you can do on some parts of the process go dramatically faster than what you can do on other parts, especially on like drawing and line art. 'Cause it's I still have spots where I get stuck, where I'm just like, why isn't this working? I've done this 1,000 times. Why is this being a pain in my ass now? But I try to keep paces moving on everything. Sometimes I get behind and have to kind of go back and compensate for a little bit, but it's on a pretty good pace right now. So I'm pretty confident in getting everything done and bashed out and ready and in people's mailboxes by December.
Vic is trying to get you in trouble. Well read.
Oh, I don't know what he's saying. He's talking about a Russian Instagram.
Oh, are you gonna skip that far? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if Is this one? If you've studied with great artists like Vic King, Elasmat, and Andy Art.
Vic.
No, I know. I talked to Vic back in the old days, though. He was a nice dude. I haven't talked to him in forever, though. I don't really know what's going on with old Vic King these days.
He's working hard.
He's working, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He pops on his own. He's got a little channel that he just pops the live stream on and just draws all day long.
That's good. Gotta practice.
Do you still do anything with Sweens? 'Cause I thought at one point you were thought of like working together with him or something, but that was a while back now.
Yeah, he's still on our our studio staff. He's still part of the company, but he's just been so consumed with trying to get his own thing finished up that's basically been his focus. He hasn't really it's not like he would care if I said this, but he's been minimal involvement until he's got his end of things wrapped up.
Yeah, it's oddity people wondering what we're talking about.
Yeah, I reached out to him. I didn't hear anything back though. I was hoping to have him on as well.
Yeah, well, he's working, 2 jobs and not working 2 jobs. He's doing his comic and he's working at the same time, so he's just busy constantly. But I think he'll get back to everybody here eventually if anyone has reached out to him for appearances or whatever.
Yeah, 'cause he used to even stream himself, but I mean, obviously, if you're busy, you can't do that.
Yeah, but Sweens, he's busting away. Hopefully that book gets out soon. I know he's got everything's going to print now. He's already gotten a lot of the side stuff in. Like he's had that for a while, so it's just getting that book, getting that printed copy in and getting those shipped out. He's on the cusp.
Nice.
Yeah,
I've been looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I've had the luxury of getting to see it, as it's went along. But it is a fun book. I think people will like it just for that fun factor alone, getting a fun adventure.
And he's a really good artist. I mean, a lot of people haven't heard of him, but if you see his stuff, it's much higher quality than you think to know. Just who's this guy? He's like, oh, look at that art.
Yeah,
Wasn't there someone else involved in that book?
I think Comic Book Dave's or Indie Comics Dave, if that was his Twitter name. He's the writer on it.
Right, right. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's that. I'll be. I'm offering like you guys said. There's the line art black and white version, obviously lettered too, but just black and white. Then there's the color version, and then the manga size, and then there's a 3-pack option for that. And for the high rollers, there is an original art tier, where you still get all the books and everything with that as well, if anyone is interested. And I'll have sketch cards going up here soon. That was the next stretch goal. I just don't actually have them drawn, so I didn't want to post it here till I had something literal where you could see what you were going to get.
Yeah.
Quick question, because I was paying attention to the art as we were scrolling, but then as we got halfway down, I only saw the lower tiers, and I saw hardcover. Are the American versions all hardcover and all the tiers?
Yes.
Okay.
The manga is the only soft one. It's going to be very basic and typical. The others are all hardbacks. Yeah.
Very nice.
Well, it's like I got my quotes and I crunched numbers and tried to look at how can I make a little bit but not have to be insane on prices. 'Cause, I mean, we've all had sticker shock plenty of times on projects, and I was like, I think once people understand what they're getting, it won't feel like sticker shock, because this is and some people could say, well, like, well, why didn't you offer it in a softback or something that's lighter on shipping and all that? It's like, so this is my book and I'm doing it the way I want. Take it or leave it. I've been working for everyone else for like 20 years. So this is one of those things where it's like I'm presenting it how I want it presented. And if that's not going to work, then that's fine. It's just a reality I'll face when I have to. I'm not opposed to that. I understand that. But I also understand, like, I want my way. And that's part of it, too.
With all these pages of any thickness, like, soft cover, I'd be worried about the binding, and at that point, it's the hardcover will definitely help with the binding be nice and solid.
Yeah,
I
there's all
agree.
kinds of little things like that. Yeah, where you could run into it. Because we've all owned at least like one mammoth book that was like a softback, graphic novel where it's just a bunch of stuff crammed together, and even if it's on like newsprint or something, like you can just tell the thing's getting wore out after a short period of actual reading. So.
It's just cardstock and glue. I mean, sometimes those things split in half as you read them and go through years.
Yeah. Yeah, so and I always felt like this was something I needed to present to people, where it's just a black book that just says death, death, death on the front. Like that's it. I'm not gonna have like my name or like that stuff can all go on the inside. But when you open it up, it's just gonna be a black book, a giant black thing that just says death, 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 and impact lettering.
So is there gonna be death in this book?
Well, not too much.
Okay.
That
That
reminds me of Dennis Leary's joke when he's talking about like they started putting the warning label on cigarettes. He's like, that ain't stopping nobody. You could put cigarettes in a black pack with a skull and say death across the front, and people will still buy it.
And he was 100% correct.
Yep.
Oh man.
As I choke on one now.
Oh, dude, I have my issues too. Like I try to lay off, but like when I'm at the desk, it is so hard not to chain smoke. Like I'm trying to vape to wean myself, but oh god, I love tobacco. I'm pretty sure it's genetic, because like everyone in my family are just we're tobacco freaks. Like I think I'm just born addicted to it, whether I liked it or not.
I chain smoke, especially like you said. No matter what, if I'm on stream or I'm drawn, I chain smoke. My mom will tune into my open mic night every now and then. She doesn't say anything because I don't think she has an account, so she's never in the chat. But she'll like next time I talk to her, she's like, "How many cigarettes did you smoke that night?" Because I watched for like a half hour and you smoked like 6. I was like, all right, Ma.
Like, Mom, half of it burned up while I was drawing, so I needed another.
Right. I needed 6 to equal 1.
Yeah. Mom, there's finesse to smoking, okay? All right. You just don't get it.
I yell at her too. I'm like, Mom, 45. Relax.
God bless them, though. I mean, you gotta love your moms.
Oh yeah.
So is this pretty much all you're going to be working on for the rest of the year, or did you have other projects as well?
Well, I kind of already mentioned some of them, but I'm doing Yellow Flash's stuff in chunks, basically on an as-need basis when he's ready for me to do more. So that's not like a daily thing, but it can be for a month or two at a time, you know. I just did a project for Passion for Drawing's Tales of Novaterra fantasy magazine. It's like a throwback to like the Conan the Barbarian fantasy mags, and John Pasima, and just all those fun fantasy tales that we got to experience in the 70s and 80s, depending on your age. So I did like a 8-page story in there for him. Just finished that out, I don't know, a few months ago or something like that. But and then there's a company called New Take Media. They're working on like a horror project, and I'm slated to do some short stories for them, just depending on what goes on with it in the future. But they're slowly seeping out some teasers, so I can't say too much about it. When they decide to say something, I'll say something as well. So I take a lot of small stuff to just keep some money coming in, that I don't have these long-term commitments to, because I can't, like, I've had offers to do a few like 48 pagers, and I'm just like, I can't right now. Like that's too much to think about on top of everything else. If you come to me and you say I'd like 5 to 8 pages, I'm like, okay, my brain can handle that. That's a burst I can do and be done with it and get back to what I'm doing. So it just depends. It's what people ask for.
Yeah, I'm kind of amazed how prolific you are. Are you a young guy or are you middle aged? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm 39, so I'm right on the cusp of 40. I'm about to be middle aged here in the next few years. But yeah, I'm an 80s kid basically, early 90s, 80s.
Yeah, it sounds like you're hitting your stride though. And you've got your own studio, and it's you've got a lot of projects going on.
Mhm.
So
I've
probably
definitely got. I feel more confident now than any other time, and there is something to desk hours and all that kind of stuff and repetition. You hear football players and sports people talk about it a lot too. Like repetition matters, even if it's a tiny bit of an increase in what you can do. It's worthwhile. So yeah, all the work, constantly drawing comics, working with other people. And I mean, I've been doing this ever since I was a little kid. I've been trying to draw comics. I basically had one goal in life and no backups. So I really didn't have a lot of option in the matter. But it's to a point now where things aren't, I don't have to think as hard because I kind of know what I'm getting into from page to page, panel to panel. I've gotten better at just doing the work, you could say, and not getting too bugged out about what I'm doing and just rolling with it.
Do you feel like you chose the harder path for your career by going through this indie route rather than pushing harder for the mains? Or did you feel like the mainstream was just impossible for you to sync with because of like what you were mentioning earlier, all the leftist politics that seem to be saturating it now?
I tried for the mainstream for like 18 years and was always just right outside of it. So by then, that was just like the nail in the coffin. When I saw that aspect of it getting out of control, it's like, this is clearly a world that like I'm not meant to participate in, nor do I want to, because it just looks absolutely terrible. So, despite the fact that, growing up, my dream would have been to work on, big DC properties, like, get to work on Teen Titans or Superman. And then, as I got a little older, I leaned more towards like what Top Cow was doing. And that was like my favorite thing for a long time because they were just, beating up DC and Marvel for a few years there. They had all the #1 books. And I wanted to really work for them someday throughout my teens. And then they kind of, fell apart and were just a shell of what they used to be. And the more time went on and the older I got, the more just doing my own work became more attractive. Because even doing submissions, I did hundreds and hundreds of submissions for people, but it was always their characters still. It was always their stuff. So even though I got the, the breathing room of just doing a submission without anyone really over my shoulder, you can only draw for free and keep doing that same thing over and over before you realize like the comics industry has changed and what I do isn't desirable any longer. So maybe find other ways to be involved. And that's when I started, me and my business partner opened up a few comic book shops and stuff like that. That was kind of like our attempt to, well, we can still be involved. We can still help sell comics, keep them relevant, even in our little town, despite the fact that the industry it never wanted anything to do with us, even though we had, I could hit up some editors at Top Cow and stuff like that occasionally. Like they were friendly with me, but the times were changing fast. It just wasn't occurring to me what was happening until later. I remember going to a convention, I don't know, somewhere in like 2014, 13, something like that. And one of the editors from Aspen, I mean, he just kind of flipped through my portfolio. Didn't seem too interested either way, which was fine. You get used to that kind of stuff. You don't expect guys to just show their cards right out. And he gave me some weird tips about inking that didn't really matter to me at the time. And I was like, okay, because I didn't ink anything anyways. I was just showing him pencils. And then I went over and got in David Finch's line, and he looked through my stuff and was like, you're pretty good. You just need a little refinement. Here, hit me up. So like, you could have an editor on one end that's like, you could tell like he just didn't want anything to do with it. All the tables for the booth filled with like diversity hires doing like
Yeah, yeah.
ugly, abstract, goofball looking stuff. The Michael Turner characters, for fuck's sake. And you just walk over to an actual artist, and that guy sees what you were trying to bare minimum. They can kind of figure out what you're trying to accomplish based off of what you've done this far. So, you just never know what you're gonna get in this industry, man. There's people that still care, but there's a lot more that don't, and that's the problem. So,
Sad truth.
I'm glad though. I think you hear a lot of CG guys say this. We're kind of glad that we never got mixed up in the mainstream to the point some other people did. Because it just sounds awful. It's like, who would want to work like that anyways? Like, that's just as bad as working at a grocery store and having some manager telling you your stocking can go wrong. It doesn't sound any better to me or any more attractive.
Yeah, I always say I was lucky being artistically schizophrenic because I can never decide if I wanted to do music or art. I was always torn between the two growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finally just switched. And I did, some other stuff early on, but then I just switched and went head on music for I don't know, from the age of 19, 20 to 34, 36 was right when and I'm glad because if I kept trying, I probably would have done something I regretted later on. You know what I mean? In the comic or art scene. And if it wasn't for Comicsgate, if it wasn't for Comicsgate, that's when I picked up the pencil again. Yeah. So.
I'm right there with you too, dude. Because been playing guitar since I was 14 and stuff. Did some bands and stuff in my 20s, but even the music on the video, the promo video on Death, 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 I did all that. It's older. I recorded it 6 or 7 years ago, but it held up, so I used it anyways. But
let's hear it.
Play it. Yeah, let's play a little.
It's a little loud, just so you know.
Oh, dude, we would have been jamming if we lived in the same area.
I think you left your echo cancellation on though, Will Red. But
oh crap! Should I do it again?
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it one more time.
Because it sounded like it was in 2 rooms away.
Yeah, I was enjoying it, and I'm like, I hope other people are too. All right.
Oh, better, yeah. Did you just do the guitars, or did you do everything on that?
I did everything, but the song originally was longer. That's just a little piece of it that I thought, could do the job. But right. I did not have the stamina to do all the drums, so I did those in 3 different pieces and then chopped them in together. It's I would have passed out and vomited trying to keep up with those drums through 6 minutes. I can double bass for a minute. Fluently.
Yeah.
Before it's okay, I'm gonna die now. We gotta.
My buddy could do it for literally 15 to 20 minutes straight, like that. He would just practice, yeah. But yeah, I'm like you, like a minute, and then I got to stop, and then I'll go back and do it again, and and like you piece it all together, nice and
I'm capable for recording purposes. I'm
Right.
not capable for like an entire show. Not
Right,
for
that's
that
I'm the
level
same
of
way.
drumming. I can do basic drumming all night because you just there's certain things you can just use anywhere, but
Yeah,
the
just
stuff
keep a
that's
rhythm and
metal,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Metal music though, you'll be spent after like 3.5 minutes. So,
Yeah, like it's funny because like all my trailers, I've gotten like either like copyright free music or like some like a friend's music that let me use it or whatever.
yeah.
But I've done music for other people's trailers, so I was like, eventually I'm gonna have to like make sure that the next campaign I launch, I take the time out and actually write my own trailer music because I've done 5 different trailers so far. One of them hasn't launched yet, so technically there's only 4 out there in the wild. But when that one launches, I'll have 5 pieces out there, and I've done a couple of things for people's YouTube channels musically. But and every time I do a trailer for like a campaign or something that I'm doing or a YouTube video that I'm doing, people go, "Oh, is that you playing music?" I'm like, "No," and I'm like, I hang my head in shame. I'm like, "No, it's not mine." So
Yeah. You'll get around to it. It's once it's to that point where it's for yours, you're like, I want to make this a little extra special. So.
Right. Well, I do have a book that I'm working on, like you, like your Death. That is something that I've been working on for a while. That I'm writing and drawing and all that stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do the music for that, and not only that, but it's every stretch goal we hit, I'm gonna release a new track and build a soundtrack. That's gonna be my. That's gonna be So like if there's a stretch goal for a trading card, you'll get the trading card, but there's gonna be a new MP3 that's gonna get put out there too. So.
Dude, the irony is there's so much other people's music I want to use, but like the one-time rights to use it are just something I'm not willing to spend the level of money on some of them want. Some things are absolutely insane for like songs nobody knows about. Some are actually relatively cheap for songs people do know about. But I'm trying to get like Devin Townsend songs and shit like that, and no, they know they're going to charge up for him. So
yeah. But it's
gotta settle for now. Once I'm a multi-millionaire, I'll start buying music.
Right. Yeah. But it's funny because too, I might undersell myself because like I'll work for trade too. Like speaking of Vic King, he asked when he was doing Asile, he asked me to do the music for the trailer, and he's like, "How much would it cost?" And I was like, "I could save $500, but." I was like, I was just launching Hunting Alice, so I was like, how about you do a variant cover?
There you go.
Let's work this out. So,
hey, time is just as valuable as money, if not
that's
more.
it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So now that you're working on your own properties, what is your vision for like your next 5 years? Is there like a unique statement that you want to make in comics with the books that you put out?
I mean, yes and no. Like, I want it to more than anything to be like timeless and memorable. Like I want people to feel that way about what I'm doing, whether they do or not. I'll find out once that time comes. But that's kind of like the feeling I want left behind. But overall, I'd say the overarching theme is for people to appreciate their families and their children and their kids, and to be good to them, even when it's difficult. So so much of the story is based around the mother and the father, the child and/or children. So a lot of that's an overarching theme in the whole thing, even if it's not like right on the nose. You can clearly tell that that's part of what drives some people to do certain things. Because I'm not one of those people where, like, how a lot of stories create motivation with a traumatic death of someone that's important to someone else.
Right.
It works. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's been done great thousands of times because that's how well it works. But when I went into this, and I don't feel like this is a spoiler or anything, I said to myself, like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want the motivation to be to keep them alive, not to do something after they're dead. I don't have any interest in telling a story where characters are only motivated because something terrible happened, rather than them trying to prevent that terrible thing. So, it's going to be a family tale, but I'm not going to go out of my way to abuse what invokes in people the wrong kind of dramatic death, in my opinion. It's like we've seen it enough times. Let's try to give some motivation that doesn't require a child or a woman to be brutally murdered or some shit like that. So,
or a pet kitten.
Yeah.
But
like I said, it's not like I have a problem with it. Plenty of my favorite things have it. It's just one of those, like, there's got to be a creative way to approach this, and that's part of my mindset with it.
is faith another strong theme? Because I think you mentioned that there's a lot of biblical references in your work.
It is, in the sense of it's hard to almost call it faith, because it's like it's a reality, like a physical reality to these characters. They live in times where these things were right in front of them. So if you're, for example, it starts in Atlantis during the flood, the biblical flood. And even though that's only a very tiny part of it, it's just a jump off point. We're talking about characters that have already seen giants, animal, human half-breeds, all these kind of old school pre-flood references, and even some after the flood, to these half-breeds that were created from basically angels trying to mate with things they weren't supposed to mate with, to the point where it said even the plants had been corrupted. Like, even the seed, the genetics of the plants were corrupted. It was so bad. So you've got characters that are already coming from like a strange world. So there's certain things they won't be as shocked by, or faith, I don't think, would be as big an issue, because they've already seen angels. They've already seen fantastical creatures. So while God is an overarching element, a big part of it, heaven's in it, there's angels in it, there's a lot of that stuff and a lot of those themes. It's hard for me to say faith, because the characters in this wouldn't be so much reliant on a blind faith as much as this is stuff that's borderline second nature to some of them. Others not so much. It's a supernatural world already, I guess you could say.
You're treating biblical references as matter of fact, basically.
Yeah. Well, that's how I treat them in real life. So that's how I'm treating them in this too.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to to chew on. Yeah, it was great talking to you, Joe.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. You gave us a lot of real interesting insight, and I think everybody's going to be following your career keenly. I don't know if you're in the CG sphere and this is where you're hoping to grow. I would say you're another Narwhal here for us. Just a very versatile talent, and you seem to have a vision as well. Which it's great that there are people like you in CG that have chosen this as your arena to flourish. So,
well, you want to be in this day and age. All you want is to try to give things to rational people that aren't trying to make everything into something else. They're looking at it, they're going, this is a comic book, this is a fiction story, this is a story of good and evil, and not just pseudo-liberal idea of good but everybody. I wouldn't say I'm catering to all people, because that's like nearly impossible. But I think definitely people that are just in this for what it is. It's entertainment. I think they'll enjoy what I'm giving them.
It's the intent. You'd like everybody to enjoy it, whereas I think what the mainstream does is they don't want everybody to enjoy it. They just want their people to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
They want to preach.
Well, I think the way you describe this book, it's like it has serious issues, but they're kind of universal human condition type issues rather than whatever is the hot button issue of the day, which is going to be a flash in the pan and be interest to people for like 6 months. And then after that, the story is just going to mean archaic to anyone who reads it, even if you happen to agree with it. So.
Yeah, it's very much a human story, but being told through, you're getting it from the perspective of big, ugly-looking creatures.
Yeah,
So
which is kind of a sci-fi standard. It's like what if humans
it's how
were
you
like
it's how you
this.
grow to love ugly things.
Yeah,
that are just physically weird, but then you're like, oh, now I kind of like him. He's cute after all.
Kind of like Vic climbing a tree. I'm sure he's very cute. Cool. Well, yeah, we'll be looking forward to more from you, and I hope you'll come back and give us updates from time to time, because your work is very interesting. Love to hear other things you're doing.
I appreciate all your kind words, and yeah, hit me up anytime, or if my brain has enough focus, I'll try to remember to get back to y'all every once in a while.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Yeah.
All right, so I'll end the stream here. Maybe I'll do a after show just to hang out with people and drop the link in the chat. But look forward to another review next week, and it'll probably be on Tuesday. Hopefully everybody will tune in then. And thank you very much for listening. And please go and back Joe Ball, Death. You still have ample time to grab that, and it looks like an amazing project. So definitely one people should check out. And Bullet Maker, if you can grab a copy still, definitely go check that out as well. So with that, thank you to everybody. Thank you, Joe, for being here. Thank you, panel, for your review and your insightful thoughts and comments on Earthbound 2. So, and to the audience, thank you and have a good night.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Good night.
Hi, Joe.